When it comes to how we got the Bible, there are several stages in the process. We have translations of the original documents that were made in Greek for the New Testament, Hebrew for the Old Testament, and the originals do not exist, the original autographs. We have copies of copies of copies. But the original documents themselves of the New Testament were delivered to individual Christians and to churches and held in repositories so that faithful copies, accurate copies, could be made. They didn't have a printing press at the time, and so manuscript is literally a handwritten document. Now, the interesting thing about all of that is in a recent development, Dr. Craig Evans has argued that the original New Testament books may have had a much longer shelf life than is normally thought. Entire papyrus libraries were thrown away in the garbage dumps of cities like Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, and the average lifespan of those documents that were discovered at the end of the 1800s, the beginning of the 1900s, the average lifespan of literary documents found in those dumps was 150 years. So a document was 150 years old on average before it was thrown away. Most of the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered first in 1947, were 100 to 150 years old, with some 200 to 300 years old, and evidently still in use when the Qumran community ceased to exist in the caves near the Dead Sea. So when Tertullian, an early Christian, says in around AD 190 that the authentic writings of the Apostle Paul were still in Corinth, Philippi, Thessalonica, Ephesus, and Rome, we should not automatically discount that possibility as being totally improbable. Peter, Bishop of Alexandria, writing around AD 300, speaks of the autographed copy of the evangelist John, the Gospel of John, which up to this day still exists in the Holy Church of Ephesus, he says. Again, we ought not to totally discount that because it's consistent with hard evidence that we have from other places. So the New Testament manuscripts that we have date from the very earliest part of the 2nd century. There are 4 of them that at least you can argue a case date from the very end of the 1st century. But the point being that in all probability, even though persecution was rife and the early New Testament autographs were eventually destroyed by constant use, the wear and tear of use, or the flames of persecution, in all probability, documents that we have that date from the first half of the 2nd century were probably made when many, if not most, of the original New Testament autograph copies were still in existence. That doesn't mean that the copies that we actually have in museums around the world were directly copied from the originals, although they could have been. But all of this should give us greater confidence that you don't have a huge gap of hundreds of years. In fact, you don't have a gap at all of the time period between the original autograph documents disappearing and the actual hard evidence copies that still exist of biblical documents in the world today. And so it should give us a great deal of peace of mind for those of us who trust the biblical documents as being the Word of God, that once again there is ample evidence that the verification and built-in quality control measures were protected by God, as He is bound and determined to give us a sure Word of God on which we can totally rely and count. Very, very important for those of us who believe the Bible. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, visit our website at santaclarachurchofchrist.com.